The House District 39B forum was originally scheduled for the evening of October 14th. The House was in session during that time, so a rescheduled forum was quickly presented to the candidates for today, October 22nd. DFL endorsed candidate Shelley Christensen had a conflict, so unfortunately Shelley was unable to attend. Republican endorsed candidate Joe Goff. Go ahead with your last name.
Garofalo.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Close.
Yes. No, it wasn't close. Is here with me today for a 30-minute conversation, and thanks for coming. I appreciate that. Oh, what made you run? Shelley's a strong contender, so what is it that made you want to run?
Yeah, the short answer is I always tell my kids to, if they want something done, they need to work for it. If they wanted it, my son is 16, my daughter's 15, and I said, if you want a new car, you're going to have to work for it, and I'll pay for half of it. And basically, if you want something done, you have to work for it. You have to do something. So early last summer, I was complaining about some political stuff and stuff going on in the state and that kind of thing. And
like what, for example?
Just taxes, high taxes, stuff like that. Just things that I just don't agree with completely. And my daughter, we're sitting at the breakfast table, and she says, "Well, Dad, you always say if you want something done, you have to do it yourself. Or if you want to change something, you have to get up and do something about it." So I thought, that's a good idea. And I actually thought about running for city council, and then found out that Kathy Lomer was no longer going to be running. And so I made a phone call to her and asked her if she'd take the time to sit down with me and run by what it takes, and asked her for advice, and she was very kind. She invited me to her house. Her and her husband Greg went over a lot of things with myself and my wife.
Hang on a sec. For those who don't know, Kathy Lomer was the state representative prior to Representative Shelley Christensen.
Correct.
So
Yep.
you have a lot of new voters in here.
Yeah, right. So Kathy Lomer decided to retire. She served, I think, for 10 years. But she invited us over, and we sat down, and I asked probably a million questions. Sure. And she said, this is a lot to take in, so take some time, think about it. And maybe a month went by, and my wife and I and our family talked about it, and decided, I consider myself a strong, logical person with a strong personality. So why not give it a shot and see if I can make a difference in our community? So
tell me about your education and work background.
Sure. So kind of a jack of all trades. I've been in construction. I was a union pipe fitter for about 6 years. From there, I went into sales and sold construction equipment. I've also been involved with automotive pretty much my whole life. My grandpa had a shop, and a lot of my uncles are auto mechanics and into racing. So got into an automotive shop and ran an automotive shop on the front end, and decided to go back to school. I wanted to go to school for law enforcement. I wanted to be a police officer as a little kid, and never thought it possible. I didn't think I was capable of doing a 4-year school. So after all the years of tech school, I decided to sign back up, went to Minneapolis Community Technical College, got a degree in law enforcement, and worked for St. Paul Police for 3 years. And worked overnights, worked weekends, worked holidays, all the stresses, and sometimes appreciated, sometimes not appreciated, all the ups and downs of that career. And about 5 years ago, I think it was, maybe 6 years ago, decided to get into real estate. I'm kind of an entrepreneur type personality. I like working for myself, and I'm very goal driven. And with the support of my wife, I was able to take on a career where I didn't get a steady paycheck every week for a few months. And so I've been doing real estate, and then my passion for cars and my entrepreneurial skills, I started up a company that does automotive repair and parts sales. So I started selling high performance parts and race car parts, and now I'm doing real estate, and I sell automotive parts.
Wow, you do have a lot of varied interests. Must be fun every day, all different. You mentioned the taxes that a year ago when you're talking to your daughter, and now pandemic comes, we're in just could be a massive deficit. Now, what do you think on the taxes? I mean, how would you address them?
I think we're the 5th highest taxed state in the nation. I would like to see that change. We're also one of 13 states that still tax Social Security income. I'd like to see that change. My parents are getting close to retirement age. They'd probably not be happy if I said that, but they're a few years away. But I want them to be able to afford to live here and not have to move to Arizona or Florida, so they can save that extra couple $100s a month on a fixed income. So, we need to stop taxing the heck out of people in our state and let them live a little more freely, and less government, less taxes, less government spending.
Well, you mentioned that, but do you think we need more spending because of the pandemic? You know, there's a lot of people who have been harmed, businesses harmed, lots of different areas.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
light rail, is running 95% fewer passengers than last year on at least 2 lines.
Well, I know, I think the light rail did an audit. I think they were behind on some money for a long time since it opened up, but that's a whole nother topic, I think. But and there's no light rail in our district, so I don't know a ton about it beyond that. But yeah, I mean, we're in a huge deficit right now, so I don't think we can tax ourselves out of that. I think we need to look at where we're spending money and analyze that and make a logical decision on where we can take funds from and maybe put them in other places until at least we get out of this deficit.
Do you think the state can address the racial inequities that were obvious with George Floyd over Memorial Day?
Well, I would have liked to see a quicker response by the governor on handling that. Obviously, my career in law enforcement was only 3.5 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And so I have a lot of friends and family that still work in law enforcement, specifically St. Paul Police. And what they do every day is exhausting. And even all of them agree that, I shouldn't say I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would imagine most of them, if not all of them, agree that what happened to George Floyd was wrong. And then what followed that was terrible. The burning of our city, watching it burn down, watching the 3rd Precinct burn to the ground and standing down was terrible. So government could have prevented a lot of damage, a lot of harm. I know that there's a lot of businesses that will probably never, ever recover in Minneapolis, and that could have been prevented if our governor would have acted sooner, I think. And
when you say acted, what exactly should he have done sooner?
Sent in the troops.
Okay.
It's easy to
the
be
National Guard, you mean?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, yep. And I just have several friends, 2 friends actually, that were in Minneapolis about a week later. And we there's a reason why we have government, and it's for law and order. And there was no law and order I think it was 2 or 3 nights, and they could have acted sooner and prevented a lot of damage. And like I said, I'm all for protest. It's our right, and we've gotten a lot done by protesting as a nation. But when it comes to damaging a lot of the small businesses, large businesses, the police department, the post office, this is unacceptable, and there's no reason why we should have standed down and just allow that to happen.
So when you hear the term defund the police, what does that do to you?
It makes me feel like people are having an emotional reaction to a logical situation. So, I think that there definitely needs to be some changes with law enforcement. And
like what, for example?
Yeah, sure. So one of them is, instead of defunding the police, how about we start spending more money with the police so that police officers aren't working 10, 12-hour shifts, working overtime, double time, overnights, staying later than their shift. They're unappreciated, overworked, and underpaid. And so they're also responding to a lot of calls for mental health and domestics, where I don't know that law enforcement is the best response to some of these calls. I think we should have some other options for that. Maybe some social workers can go along with officers that are trained to handle those types of situations, and they can respond directly to those, so that other officers that are trained to handle other situations can respond to calls for emergency service.
And would you agree, though, that all fields have bad apples? You know what I mean? And again, this is a meet Joe thing. This is not all about the state issues. This is not in format. But how would you screen? And this is an important area, the public safety.
Sure. Well, I don't know if I would imagine that most people don't understand what's involved to become a police officer. There's screening and background checks just to get into the law enforcement education center.
Okay.
We shot firearms in school, so you have to go through a pretty decent background check just to even get into the schooling. Which definitely there were some students that I knew, you go into and that they're probably gonna have a thin chance of getting a job just because of their personality type or their behavior or whatever. But and then also on top of that, when you get into a law enforcement career, they do a really thorough background check. So they not only do they look up your record, but they call previous employers, they call your family members, they call neighbors, they call past neighbors. And if you're a bad apple, like you say, then usually a flag pops up and they say, hey, yeah, that person was he was decent, but there's a few times where I saw him lose his temper outside when he was whatever the case may be. But so yeah, is there some bad apples? Absolutely. But I would say in law enforcement, there's less because they do go through quite a thorough background check. Of course, just like some other really high-end fields like a pilot or a doctor, you don't want a bad apple when you're going in for surgery or when you're landing that plane and on the runway, you're hoping that there's not a bad apple, that one person is doing what they're supposed to do and doing it well.
I'm trying to pronounce your name.
Garofalo.
Garofalo.
Don't
yes?
worry. Yes.
No, okay.
I'm used to it.
Okay, Joe G, okay?
There you go.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Tell me on the, let's talk the coronavirus, the pandemic. Let's say that it goes out of executive order into legislative hands. Would you, under any circumstances, vote to have stronger controls, restrictions? What would be necessary?
My general response to that is I believe in less restriction, less government. I think that a majority of people, a strong majority of people, are smart enough to make their own decisions. We're surrounded by wise people, adults, and we don't need to control them on every aspect of their lives. We have rules, we have laws, and 99.9% of people obey those rules and laws. When you're driving down the highway and you're going 55 miles an hour and there's a little yellow line between you and the person going the opposite direction, you're putting faith in the other person that they're going to obey the rules and laws. And, obviously there's some circumstances where that, obviously car accidents happen and stuff, but for the most part, we do trust on our neighbors and our people in our community and our people in our state and around the world to do the right thing. So I believe in the better good of people, and I don't think the government needs to put a cap on them or handcuff them or put red tape around anything.
Okay, so let's say the cases continue to spike, more hospitalizations, possibly even more deaths. Still, do you have faith in people?
That's a tough question. I don't know. I think that hospitalizations have gone down, but the count
But let's say I'm just working with you.
Hypothetically, sure.
Yeah, hypothetically.
I think you have to look at it case by case, and if things start to turn, then certainly we have to make adjustments. But in general, I think that we need to be able to make decisions on our own, or at least at a local level. I don't think the governor should be dictating what happens in St. Paul and also what happens in Ely, Minnesota, or in Mankato, Minnesota. Like each of these communities are different. They're handling it differently, and their densities are different. For example, Grant is not the same as downtown St. Paul, the same as downtown Minneapolis. So we should handle it a little differently than Minneapolis is handling it.
I forgot what city I was at. It was on the border of Canada, and I said to them, wow, what must this have been like during, more lockdown, more restricted? They go like this, same. And I looked and I said, yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah, if you don't have a neighbor for acres, you can't see a neighbor's house. The likelihood of a spread is I would assume, I'm not a doctor, but I would assume very thin.
Would you listen to health officials?
Of course. I'm not a health official, so I'm going to take health advice from health officials and health experts.
What do you consider Minnesota good at, and what do we need to do better?
I think we're good at, we have a very strong community base. Minnesota Nice. When I worked in automotive, I had several customers come in and they would be from like California, from around the nation. And I always say, I come here and it seems like everybody has deep-rooted friends. So we have a very strong sense of community. I think that's very good. We also have high education, high work standards. When I was a pipe fitter, there was tradesmen that would call from Florida and down south and saying, if you're a union pipe fitter in Minnesota, you have a job down here anytime you want. So we're hard workers. We have a very traditional, old school sense of self. Family dinner at 5, meat and potatoes. So like I say, sense of community, family, work ethic, education.
And what can we improve at? You don't think I forget half my question,
how about
do you,
overtaxing, over government, over regulation,
Okay.
Minimizing Met Council, especially out in this area, letting people be free, giving them the liberty to do what they want when they want to do it, as long as it doesn't negatively affect their neighbor.
How old are your daughters again, 15, 16?
Son and daughter. My son Gavin is 16 and my daughter is 15.
How are they getting education right now?
That's a tough one. They were doing hybrid learning.
In which school system?
They're actually at Park in Cottage Grove. And my daughter and son were both doing hybrid. They're on their iPads 2 days a week, and they're in school 2 days a week. And then Friday was like a flex day, which I don't know. Anyway, my daughter really struggled with it. She said that when she go to school, they were pretty much doing the same thing as distance learning. It's just that they were in class. And so they'd be in class for 55 minutes or whatever it is, and they'd be on their iPad for 15 minutes in the schoolwork, and the rest of the time they just sit there with their mask on and wait for the bell to ring, go to the next class, and do it all over again. So she said she'd rather be at home doing it, so we switched her to full online. And then my son he was in a woodshop class, so he was building actually a wooden stool. So when he finished that, he actually transitioned to online as well, just because it's so difficult. And
I'm curious why Cottage Grove and not in
yeah, so they went when we lived
district.
on the east side of St. Paul, and they were going to a school in St. Paul, and then before junior high, they switched to Cottage Grove, and they were already in swimming and
I got it.
school activities and stuff, and had good friendships down there and stuff. So we just
Sure.
kept them down there.
Are they ever going to recover education-wise? I mean, without, again, there's people who say, well, need put more money and we need more technology for those areas that don't have it, and that is out there, who don't have very good internet service. I mean, some ways that comes down to that just doesn't, that's a magic rabbit, doesn't make that happen. Funding often is necessary. How do you feel on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we always need more funding for our schools.
Joel. No, you said something I'm not used to. Okay. Usually it's people are saying, oh, we can never have enough funding, so I'm not used to that statement.
Yeah. We can't have enough funding. I mean, this is our future. I obviously care about my kids and everybody's children's education. That's what's going to drive our economy. That's what's going to drive our safety, our health. I mean, we're educating the next generation of doctors and lawyers and politicians. So yeah, I mean, whether they're going to recover or not, I think that's going to have a lasting impression on them. I'm pushing my kids to look into post-secondary education, and just move forward and keep the learning going, and while their brains are like sponges. And
When they're at home, is it you or your wife who has to, I don't want to call the word babysit, but hang out with them to make sure they're doing it? Or are they just good kids, they do it?
They're pretty good kids, yeah. We're very fortunate to have very responsible, good children, yeah. We check in with them, obviously, and make sure they're doing their schoolwork, and usually, unfortunately, it seems like it hasn't been very much of a workload for them.
Is that good or bad?
I think it's bad. I'd like
I
to
think
see them.
it's terrible.
Yeah, I'd like to see them be a little bit more challenged.
Right.
And less free time. It seems like there's maybe only a few hours of schoolwork to do when they're not at school, and that's really tough. I don't know what the answer is. I'd like to talk to more people about that and find out what a solution would be. I think that schools that were already set up for online training probably have a head start on that. But all these schools that are doing distance learning or hybrid or whatever, it's a challenge, and I feel for them and the teachers and the staff and the students.
State standards, I don't even know where we're at. I know a lot of parents who are extremely worried, because you're going through, okay, they passed, they made it, they did their testing, on to the next grade, and now it's kind of like limbo. And again, I don't blame the state. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I blame the pandemic, the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to some people that have their kids in private schools and they're going to school full time, and they have not had the concerns that I have with my kids going to Park. And I wish that there was a full time in school deal, but I obviously can't speak for all the teachers that have to go to school and teach every day. But I would say that police officers show up every day and go to work. Doctors show up every day and go to work. The person at Super America or Holiday, I guess it's Speedway now, they all show up every day and go to work. So if we're demanding people show up and go to work that are required to, I think that maybe teachers are in that category if it comes to that. But I don't want to speak for them. That's a tough call. And I don't want to be the person that tries to force someone to go to work if they don't feel safe. That's not a good thing either. And so that's a tough call. I'm on the fence about it. I really don't know what the answer is.
The recent bonding bill, how do you feel?
Bonding is good. It can create jobs. It's great for our infrastructure. But we also have a huge deficit we're facing now, and all we did was just put a higher balance on our credit card, so to speak, and now we're going to have to face that next year. So,
were there any things that you wished weren't part of it?
I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
To answer that question, educatively.
Lucky for you, Joe. I had follow-up questions for that. So what made you, what is it that Representative Christensen isn't doing that you want to do, that you believe you can do better?
Deregulate, less tax, less spending, fund our police, overfund our police, represent the areas that we are going to be, hopefully I will be representing, I've been outdoor knocking, and
I was going to ask you, tell me about the
Yeah.
campaign experience. Yes.
wow. So a year ago when I signed up, to do this, so to speak,
Everything was fine, yeah.
who would have known, right? So it was a lot of up in the air, and then in July I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go out there and door knock and kind of gauge people's comfort level. So when I go out, I've always been very respectful.
They answer the door?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Absolutely, yeah. I've only had maybe 3 people that say they'll open the door but leave the screen door shut and just say, oh, please give us some space. And every time I knock on the door,
Joe, you've been lucky with people then. Okay.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are just happy to see someone who cares be at their door and willing to talk to them. I mean, I'll spend 5-10 minutes at every door if they want to talk to me about topics, whether it's something I believe in or something I don't believe in. I'm still an open ear and want to hear what they have to say because I want to represent the community.
Give me an example of what you don't believe in that you listen, but you'll take the time to listen.
Sure. I just knocked on a door in Grant, and the person said that he believes that the governor should have the executive power still. And I said he hasn't made an executive power decision since, I believe, August. So what was the reasoning for his executive orders for September and October? I don't see that. And we just disagreed, but I respect.
I thought you were asking me questions.
No, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, wait, who's the moderator here, Joe? Remember? Yeah, I'm just
So,
kidding.
we disagreed, and I said, look, the legislators are elected to represent their district. Okay. And if the governor takes that away, what are they even doing there? So I lost my train of thought. I was saying earlier.
There's so many questions. Tell me how you're communicating or would communicate as a legislator.
Sure. So that's what someone was door knocking. So
yeah.
I just want to reiterate that when I do knock on doors, I'm not trying to push myself on anybody. Knock on the door, I take 3, 4, 5 steps back, so I'm at least 10 feet away. Mm-hmm. If they're fine with approaching me, they'll put their hand out and so on. And the feedback has been great. People are very happy to see a living human being at their door, asking about their concerns, what their values are, what they want to see happen at a state level. And I just continue that same open door sort of philosophy. My cell phone number is on my mailers. My email address is on the mailers. I want people to be able to get a hold of me, and I want to represent our district. I don't want, I've heard some people say that, well, you're going to vote on your party. In some instances, yes, I agree with the Republican Party. I can't think of anything specifically that I'm like diehard for or against off the top of my head. But if my community wants something, and 90% of the people come to me and they say they want a bridge at Osgood and 36, mm-hmm. I'm going to push for that because that's what the community wants.
Well, when you say they come to you, might you be listening to a silent minority or a loud minority, and so you're really not sure. So you always have to be careful on that, of course.
For sure. And I saw some previous state reps do like town halls. I'd love to do that. I'd probably get chewed up a little bit being a new candidate, but I'd love to have the opportunity to sit down and actually talk to people. And as long as they're cordial and friendly and have an open mind, just as I would expect to be. I'd love to have that opportunity to sit down and talk with people. And in fact, when I have discussions with people and we have more than a 10-minute conversation, and whether it's in agreement or disagreement, I always say, if you ever want to get a cup of coffee and sit down and chat, I'd seriously love to do that. I'm a talker, and I'm more than open to your opinions and your beliefs and your values, and let's hash it out. And let's get somewhere. And
I was just about to ask you how you would work with someone across the aisle.
So when I was in law enforcement, I would work with people that, parked illegally, and I had to write them a ticket, and somehow I'd sell them a ticket.
We have 5 minutes left.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I noticed you were watching.
Yeah, I was like, I thought that was a stop sign. It was a 5 sign. No, just being able to work with people, and I'm in real estate. That's what I do for a living is negotiate for a living. So when you're selling a house and my buyers want to buy the house, my job is to represent them in their best interest. Your job is to represent your sellers in their best interest. And so I negotiate for a living, and I think that I'll be very strong at that at the state capitol, and I'd love the opportunity to do so. So I'm not closed-minded. I'm not hard-nosed. There's certain things that I am very strongly believe in, but I'm definitely not the only person. I'm not the smartest person in the world, and I don't believe that. And so if somebody has a different idea and it turns out to be a better idea, I'm all for it.
Tell me about how your feelings on unfunded mandates, where the legislature passes and it's like, ooh, the county or the local governments have to pick up what they say we now have to do.
I don't know enough about that. I really don't understand the question completely, but my general response is less government is good, less spending is good, less taxing is good.
Yeah.
So
no, it's where the government will say, okay, you now have to do this, and then
You know, it's funny you say
They're
that. I
not
got an
paying
email
with it,
today.
yeah.
Yeah, I got an email today saying that I think it's West Lakeland that they want to, the city wants to bring in water. And there's several people who are like, no, I have my water tested fine and
Right.
my well is fine. I don't want city water to come in here. I don't want to pay for that. I have water access right here. So that's a topic that I was going to start digging into. I briefly scanned it, and my general response is let people do what they want to do, like I said, unless it affects their neighbor negatively.
You're more of a hybrid, I got to tell you. I mean, from my end, having known.
Well, I
how-
definitely have some strong conservative beliefs. Like I said, less taxes,
No,
less
it's a
government,
good
less
thing.
bank. But
Yeah, no, it's a good. I'm not saying it's a negative thing. It's
Okay.
just it's an interesting thing because after having had so many Republicans and Democrats come in, and then especially for a partisan race and that. So, what's your hope? What do you want to leave your mark in the legislature? Is there anything like some people leave trails? Senator Housley wanted to do vulnerable adults in the long-term facilities. Do you have something that you would like to say, wow, you know what, that's what I want to do?
I agree with her a lot with that. My grandpa was my best friend. I looked up to my grandpa so much. He passed away on my birthday, actually, in 2008. And he was a hard-working, worked to the day he died pretty much. And so I have a very strong connection with the elderly and grandparents and retirees. And
Did
so,
he
like,
die of COVID?
no,
from
oh,
COVID?
2008.
Oh, 2008. Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't hear
no, that's
that.
all right.
Yeah.
But I would. I kind of lost my thought, but where I'd like to leave a stamp: caring for our elders, caring for small businesses, letting people do what they want to do when they want to do it. Like I say, as long as it doesn't negatively affect anybody.
Well, we've covered a lot of topics. Is there any, Joe, that you feel strongly on that you definitely want viewers to know how you stand?
Yeah, I'm definitely for less taxes, less spending, smaller government, giving control back to the people of their community, and liberty and freedom. So very patriotic. I love America. I think it's the greatest nation in the world. I think that's why we have such a strong number of people moving here every year and wanting to move here.
Have you voted for yourself already?
Not yet.
Are you waiting for election day?
I'm going to, but I'm also worried that I might forget with everything going on. But yes, I definitely will.
doubt that. Goodness sakes, with all the
Yeah.
social media, are you kidding me?
Right.
Do you think that's been, and talking about let's go social media, there's been a lot of people who said it's been unfair in that they've sent out, and I know for sure Senate District 39 had both ways where they were just wicked statements being made about both candidates, put out by outside third-party expenditures, many of them outside state. Have you gotten in any of that?
I've gotten a few, and actually that I knocked on a door where someone said, "Oh, you're Joe Garofalo. I saw a flyer yesterday that
See, how
said
can
you're."
they go pronouncing your name correct? Okay, go ahead.
Some people just kept luck with it. But he said that, "Oh, I saw your flyer yesterday, and it said something about Second Amendment." And I said, honestly, if you want to have a discussion about it, I'm not, some. Everybody deserves a gun, and you're born with a gun in your diaper. That's not me. So if you want to have a logical talk about it, I'm all for it. So, but for the most part, I honestly kind of laugh about it. It's funny, and what's really funny is going out and people saying, "Oh, you're Joe Garofalo." Like I've never had that before, and so it's really strange.
Joe
It's kind of
Garofalo,
uncomfortable.
right? Did I do it right? Joe Garofalo?
Garofalo.
Joe Garofalo. Got it. Now I did do it right.
There you go.
Thanks
Yeah.
for coming. Appreciate
Thank you so much for
yeah.
having us, or for having me, and
Yeah.
to Valley Channels and the Gazette and all of you for being here. And it's too bad that Shelley couldn't be here, but I enjoyed the time anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.